Have you ever wondered what lurks behind the curtains of a seemingly perfect family? What secrets bind them together or tear them apart? Let's delve into a tale where the facade of happiness masks darker truths. In upscale neighborhoods, appearances are often deceptive. Behind the polished surfaces and grand entrances, some families harbor secrets so dark they can eventually lead to tragedy. What makes a person cross the line within their own family? Why do some individuals risk everything for forbidden relationships, even when the stakes are devastatingly high? Can we ever truly know what goes on behind closed doors, or are we always just outsiders looking in? Often the lure of the forbidden is intertwined with a desire for something new or exciting, which can cloud judgment and lead to catastrophic decisions. As for the second question, while we may never know the full story, signs and whispers often hint at the truth, urging us to look closer. In the lush suburbs of New Haven, the esteemed entrepreneur Michael Bentley, his wife Eleanor, and Eleanor's daughter from a previous marriage, Isabel, epitomized the perfect family. Neighbors admired their affluence, charm, and contentment. However, beneath the veneer of dinner parties and manicured lawns, a dangerous undercurrent was set to ensnare the Bentleys in a web of betrayal, forbidden passion, and ultimately, violence. What started as typical marital dissatisfaction between Michael and Eleanor escalated into a shocking narrative of illicit affection between Michael and Isabel, culminating in a deadly confrontation that shattered lives. Their journey began at a charity banquet in Philadelphia in spring 2010, where Michael, a 35-year-old financial mogul known for his sharp wit, met Eleanor, a 32-year-old interior designer and a divorced mother. Their swift romance captivated everyone around them. Eleanor saw in Michael the stability she craved after a rocky first marriage, while Michael was drawn to Eleanor's sophistication. 6 months later, Eleanor's finger sparkled with a massive diamond, and their wedding at the prestigious Rittenhouse Hotel became the season's highlight. Isabel, only 7, beamed as her mother married the man who would step into the role of her father. As the years passed, the Bentley's life seemed to flourish on the surface. Michael's career soared, making him a partner at his firm, while Eleanor perfected the role of a corporate wife, her life revolving around high society events and raising Isabel, who lacked nothing, from elite schooling to extravagant vacations. Yet the novelty of their union faded, revealing cracks. Eleanor felt increasingly isolated in their expansive home, her attempts to reconnect with Michael overlooked as he buried himself deeper in work. The marriage, maintained for appearances, began to crumble as Isabel transformed from a clever child into a stunning teenager, altering the dynamics within the Bentley household in the most unexpected and perilous ways. In the Bentley household, beneath the surface of familial harmony, tension brewed as Isabel approached her transition to adulthood, marked by her upcoming college departure. The dynamics within the family were subtly shifting, reflecting the undercurrents of unspoken desires and fears. Isabel, with her vibrant energy and poised demeanor, was not just a reflection of her mother Eleanor's elegance, but also possessed an independent spirit that drew others toward her. Her relationship with her stepfather, Michael Bentley, once filled with shared activities and educational encouragement, had transformed as he faced his own personal reckoning at the threshold of midlife. Michael, who had once been a pillar of support and presence in Isabel's life, found himself revisiting his role as her protector and guide during this pivotal year. His re-engagement in her life was not merely coincidental, but a deliberate attempt to reconnect with the youthful vigor and possibilities that Isabel represented. He attended her dance recitals with a newfound regularity and engaged her in discussions about her future aspirations, his advice reflecting both care and a desire to maintain relevance in her rapidly evolving world. Eleanor initially viewed this renewal of father-daughter closeness as a positive development, perhaps even a bridge to mend the growing emotional distance between her and Michael. However, as the months passed, she could not ignore the nagging doubts that crept into her mind. The abrupt pauses in conversation upon her entry, the lingering glances, subtle yet unmistakable signs of a deeper bond forming between Michael and Isabel. The situation reached a critical point one stormy evening in April. Eleanor was away, and Michael and Isabel found themselves alone, an occurrence that had become increasingly rare. What started as a mentorship session about Isabel's future under the guise of a casual wine tasting evolved unexpectedly. The barriers of their conventional roles began to dissolve under the dual influence of the tempest outside and the wine within. Isabel, emboldened by Michael's attentiveness and perhaps the wine, ventured into uncharted territory by admitting her admiration for him, not just as a father figure but as a man. Michael, caught off guard yet viscerally aware of the burgeoning mutual attraction, stepped beyond the bounds of propriety. They discussed their feelings openly, acknowledging a mutual attraction that was both exhilarating and forbidden. That night, the foundation of their relationship altered irrevocably. Boundaries were crossed, lines that were never meant to be blurred were obscured. They vowed to each other that it was a singular lapse, a mistake propelled by circumstance and isolation. Yet the seed of change was planted. Their interactions became charged with a new awareness, each moment together a dance of cautious steps and restrained whispers, as they navigated the complex web of emotions and consequences they had woven. As Isabel prepared to step into the broader world of college, the gravitational pull between them didn't wane. It transformed. What started as a shared secret that whispered through the halls of their mansion became an audacious defiance of societal norms. They told themselves stories to justify their actions. There were no blood ties to betray. Eleanor was distant. Their connection was a bizarre kind of love. Yet, with every stolen moment, the fabric of their reality thinned. Michael navigated his dual life with a desperate precision. At home, he was the image of detached propriety, a husband in name and routine alone. At work, he was more driven than ever, using his career as both a shield and a scapegoat for his frequent absences. But when he was with Isabel, Michael allowed himself to forget the man he was supposed to be, immersing in a passion that rejuvenated and condemned him simultaneously. Their secret rendezvous grew more daring, impromptu meetings cloaked under the pretense of college visits, their desperation palpable. Each encounter was a mix of anticipation and fear, each goodbye laced with the promise of just one more time. Isabel, meanwhile, wrestled with her dual life. Her college days were marked by academic excellence, shadowed by an emotional turmoil that seeped into every relationship she attempted to form. Her heart was tethered to Michael, each day without him a study in contradiction, her public persona flourishing, her private self unraveling. And the charade affected not just their relationship but their very identities. Michael, invigorated by the secrecy, began subtly altering his appearance, as if trying to match the man in Isabel's eyes. He frequented the gym, his wardrobe slowly morphed to reflect a younger, more vibrant version of himself. Isabel found herself living on the edge of joy and despair. Her successes at school were overshadowed by the isolation of her secret. She deflected any attempts at intimacy from her peers, her heart and mind miles away, locked in a forbidden embrace. Their story, a tapestry woven with threads of risk and desire, was on the brink of unraveling. There were close shaves, times when Eleanor almost caught a glimpse of the truth, times when Isabel's friends nearly pieced together the incongruities of her weekend escapades. Yet, they continued, driven by a misguided conviction that they could keep their world intact. Michael and Isabel began to dream of a future where they could be together openly, free from the shackles of deception. Michael whispered promises of a life together once Isabel graduated, a new beginning carved out of the ruins of their choices. Eleanor's morning had been a tangle of routine chores and errands, but an unexpected call from a friend who mentioned seeing Michael in a part of town far from his office during work hours ignited a spark of suspicion. This friend, unaware of the underlying tensions in the Bentley household, commented offhandedly about the oddity, assuming it was business-related. Eleanor's heart sank. Michael had told her he'd be tied up in meetings all day. As the afternoon sun climbed higher, the unsettling thought nagged at her, growing into a compulsion. On a whim tinged with dread, she decided to use the tracking app she had reluctantly installed on Michael's phone, a silent witness to her growing paranoia. The app confirmed her worst fears. Michael was not where he claimed to be. With the coordinates set on her GPS, Eleanor drove toward an unfamiliar part of New Haven, her mind reeling with scenarios she dared not fully articulate. As she pulled up to the nondescript motel pinpointed by the app, her breath caught at the sight of Michael's car parked outside. Hesitation gripped her as she sat in the car, wrestling with the impulse to turn away and preserve the last remnants of her denial. But as she gathered her courage, another familiar vehicle entered the parking lot, Isabel's car. The sight of her daughter hastening towards one of the motel rooms dispelled any remaining doubts. Heart pounding, Eleanor followed Isabel, pushing open the motel room door just in time to see Michael and Isabel in a compromising embrace. The room, dimly lit and stark, felt like a stage set for a tragedy as the three of them stood frozen. "Mom," Isabel's voice broke first, a mix of horror and plea. Eleanor, her face a mask of shock and hurt, raised a hand to silence her. Michael started to explain, his words fumbling, but the look of utter betrayal on Eleanor's face cut him off. The tension in the room thickened with each passing second, the silence punctuated only by the distant rumble of thunder. Accusations flew, mingled with Michael's attempts at apology and Isabel's tearful explanations. But the damage was irrevocable. Eleanor's heart, weighed down by the deception unraveled before her eyes, felt irreparably broken. As the door swung closed behind Eleanor, sealing her within the cramped motel room with Michael and Isabel, the air thickened with a palpable tension. Michael's eyes, wide with a mix of fear and disbelief, flicked between Eleanor and Isabel, his posture rigid as if bracing for impact. Eleanor's voice was ice as she addressed them, each word sharp and precise. "How long has this been going on?" Her eyes, usually warm, were stone cold, fixating on Isabel, who shrunk back, her face pale. Isabel's voice trembled, barely above a whisper. "Mom, we didn't mean—" But her words faltered under Eleanor's piercing gaze. Michael interjected, "Eleanor, please, let's talk about this calmly." But calm was beyond Eleanor's grasp now. The sight of them together, the intimacy she had inadvertently witnessed, was too much. Her heart raced as betrayal twisted inside her like a knife. She barely heard Michael's pleas, her focus narrowing on the undeniable evidence of their duplicity. The room felt smaller by the moment, the walls closing in as the reality of the situation settled heavily on Eleanor's shoulders. Her family, her life, the trust she had placed in both Michael and Isabel, it all felt like a mirage now. In a sudden movement, Michael reached towards the nightstand, his intention unclear but unmistakably desperate. Eleanor's survival instincts kicked in. Without fully thinking through the consequences, she moved, her actions swift and driven by a mix of fear and protective fury. As she lunged forward, Isabel screamed, a high-pitched, terrified sound that pierced the heavy air. Michael's hand brushed against the drawer, but Eleanor was faster, grabbing his wrist, her other hand slamming the drawer shut. The struggle was brief but intense, Eleanor's adrenaline lending her a surprising strength. Isabel, caught in the middle, tried to intervene, her voice choked with sobs. "Stop! Please stop!" But the chaos only escalated. In the scuffle, a tragic misstep, a stumble, a fall, and then a sharp, echoing crack. Silence descended like a shroud. Michael and Eleanor froze, the immediate danger momentarily forgotten as they turned towards Isabel. She lay on the floor, motionless, the impact against the furniture leaving no room for doubt. The severity of the accident, stark and dreadful, was immediately apparent. Eleanor collapsed beside her daughter, her hands trembling as she tried to assess the damage, her medical instincts kicking in despite the shock. Michael stood back, his face ashen, the fight gone out of him, replaced by a dawning horror at the unintended consequences of their confrontation. Outside, the storm that had been brewing finally broke, rain pelting against the windows, mirroring the chaos inside. Eleanor cradled Isabel, her voice a broken whisper. "Help me, please. We need to call an ambulance." As Michael fumbled with his phone, dialing emergency services, the gravity of the situation sank in. The affair, the lies, the anger, all paled in comparison to the immediate need to save Isabel. In that moment, the fractured family found a single point of unity in their shared fear for Isabel's life. The tranquility of the once quiet New Haven community was shattered by the sound of sirens converging on the nondescript motel. The parking lot became a blur of red and blue lights as first responders rushed into room 114. The scene that unfolded before them was one of palpable despair. As the ambulance sirens wailed into the distance, carrying Isabel to the hospital, the motel room where the confrontation had occurred was left in disarray. Michael, with his hands cuffed behind his back, sat in a corner under the watchful eyes of a police officer, while Eleanor stood by the window, her figure silhouetted against the flashing lights outside, grappling with the aftermath of the chaotic and nearly tragic confrontation. Detective Ethan Harper took charge, his experienced eyes scanning the room for clues even as he took statements. The initial confusion at the scene had led to Michael's arrest, primarily as a precaution given the high emotions and his attempted reach for the bedside drawer, which had been perceived as a potential threat. Eleanor, her composure slowly returning, recounted the events to Detective Harper. She explained how the intense argument had escalated and how a sudden physical altercation had led to Isabel's fall against the room's furniture, resulting in her severe injury. Her voice trembled as she detailed the panic that had followed, her desperate attempts to administer first aid, and the overwhelming fear that had gripped her as she realized the extent of her daughter's injuries. Detective Harper listened intently, jotting down notes. The absence of a gunshot wound simplified some aspects of the case but complicated others, as it shifted the focus from a potential attempted homicide to a domestic disturbance that had escalated dangerously. As the local community began to buzz with rumors and speculation, the police proceeded with their investigation. They collected forensic evidence from the room, documented the disarray, and took photographs that depicted a scene of desperation and struggle. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Isabel's condition stabilized, though she remained unconscious. The medical team worked diligently, their efforts focused on assessing the damage and ensuring her recovery. Eleanor, after giving her statement, rushed to the hospital, her mind a whirlwind of worry and regret. Back at the scene, Detective Harper spoke with the motel staff and reviewed security footage, which showed the arrival and the frantic entrance of Eleanor into the motel room. Each piece of evidence helped piece together a timeline of events, but the true motives and the full dynamics of the relationship between Michael and Isabel remained obscured by half-truths and secrets. In the ensuing days, the investigation deepened. Detective Harper reached out to Isabel's friends and Michael's colleagues, piecing together their accounts with the family's history. What emerged was a portrait of a family that had been teetering on the edge for longer than anyone outside had realized. The community watched in stunned disbelief as details of the Bentley family's private lives began to surface, revealing a complex web of emotions and decisions that had culminated in the public and painful unraveling at the motel. For Eleanor, the challenge was now twofold: supporting her daughter through her recovery and reconciling the breach of trust that had shattered their family. As the investigation continued, the Bentleys faced not only the prospect of legal repercussions, but also the task of rebuilding their lives and relationships in the aftermath of the events that had so publicly exposed them. In the wake of the tumultuous events at the motel, the investigation into the Bentley family affair had laid bare more than just illicit secrets. It had unraveled the carefully constructed facades of all involved. The hospital room where Isabel slowly recuperated became a silent witness to the fragmented pieces of a once ideal family portrait. Detective Ethan Harper pieced together the timeline of the affair that had spanned over a year, meticulously hidden from Eleanor and the unsuspecting public. With each revelation, the scene at the motel, initially deemed an accident, morphed disturbingly into a potential crime of passion. Public opinion oscillated wildly as speculation mounted about who is the responsible of Isabel's condition. Was it Michael, driven by desperation to silence the truth? Eleanor, in a moment of enraged betrayal? Or Isabel, caught in a maelstrom of guilt and despair? The complexities of the situation deepened, demanding a thorough investigation by the authorities. Helen Carmichael, the district attorney, knew this case had a lot of moving parts and was involved in the proceedings herself because of the stakes. A trial that would enthrall and divide the community was set in motion when, following a thorough examination of the evidence, Detective Harper took the bold step of charging Michael and Eleanor Bentley with attempted murder. In the courtroom, Michael, once a beacon of corporate stature, appeared visibly diminished, his figure haggard as he donned the standard orange jumpsuit. His defense, spearheaded by the renowned attorney Xavier Brockton, argued that the incident was the result of escalating familial tensions and pleaded for leniency based on his lack of prior offenses and the situational nature of the conflict. Eleanor, transformed by the ordeal, was depicted by her legal team as a wronged wife and mother who had acted purely in self-defense, believing Michael was reaching for the gun in the drawer to silence the truth permanently. The pivotal role of Isabel's testimony loomed over the trial. However, grappling with her own recovery and conflicting loyalties, she chose to invoke her Fifth Amendment rights, declining to testify against either of her parents. Amidst a tense courtroom atmosphere, Michael ultimately accepted a plea deal, pleading guilty to aggravated assault. His sentencing to 10 years in prison marked a somber conclusion to his part in the saga. As he was led away, his lingering glance towards Eleanor conveyed a tumult of regret and loss. Eleanor, with charges against her dropped due to insufficient evidence of intent, exited the courthouse into a world that no longer resembled the one she had known. Within a short span, she relocated, driven by a need to escape the remnants of her past life and the judgmental eyes of those who once knew her. Isabel, her physical wounds slowly healing, faced perhaps the longest road to recovery. The emotional and psychological scars of the ordeal prompted her to leave college and seek intensive therapy to navigate the complex feelings tied to her family and the trauma of the incident. The relationship between Isabel and Eleanor, strained to near breaking, became a path of cautious, painful rebuilding. The community, stirred by the tragedy and its revelations, initiated new efforts to tackle domestic violence and foster open discussions on family dynamics, hoping to prevent such hidden agonies from festering unseen. The Bentley case, though it receded from the national headlines, left an indelible mark on all who encountered it, a stark reminder that behind the facade of perfection often lies a web of secrets waiting to unravel.